Welcome to Learn Literacy, the podcast that brings you inspiring conversations that focus on teaching literacy through language and structure. I am your host, Cheryl Urbanzik, an experienced educator and passionate advocate on a mission inspired by my family's experience with dyslexia. Each episode explores topics that help us understand how we can teach the language as it is to the student as they are. Tune in and become part of a community dedicated to supporting language for life. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Learn Literacy podcast, where we advocate for language for life through teaching literacy through language and structure. And I'm very excited today with our practitioner profile. I'm joined by Holly Robbertz from Ohio, and she is a fellow embedded in a school district there and does lots of great things. So I'm excited to hear about her. Welcome, Holly. Thank you for joining us.
You're so welcome. Thanks, Cheryl, for having me. I'm so appreciative of this opportunity.
You're welcome. So I think we met even outside of the OG world when we were both learning morphology and structured word inquiry and things. And then our paths kept crossing in different things that we were doing. And so it's always been fun to stay connected.
As I can remember how long it's been now.
I know. Well, exactly. That's quite some time ago. Well, it's one of the things I really hope to achieve through this is just hearing people's stories, how they learned about OG, what their OG learning journey was. So why don't we start there? I know you've been in it for quite some time. So if you don't mind going back and telling us how you learned about OG and who you studied with, where you studied, that type of thing.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So by training, I'm an early childhood educator and an intervention specialist, which means special educator in the United States. I'm originally from New England, and so really started working in the mid-'80s at a lab school that was called the Elliott Pearson Children's School that was attached to the Child Study Department at Tufts University, and was very fortunate to consider it to have been a real formative experience professionally. So all of our classrooms were lined with observation booths. So educators would go to class and then they'd come and be assigned by their faculty to observe us while we were teaching. And afterwards, we'd meet with them. And students could actually see them. The belief was that kids should know that they were being observed. So they were screened observation booths. And then afterwards, we would process what happened in the classroom. And I supervised graduate teachers who were getting their master's degree and undergraduate field study students who were also teachers in the classroom. And so after I teach, part of my responsibility was meeting with these groups of teachers who were getting their degrees. And it really wasn't about that there was a right or wrong way. It really was to process what we observed or to talk about why we might have made a decision to teach a certain way. And it was very holistic approach to teaching. Like all parts of the child were deeply valued, as well as their connection with their family. And curriculum was developed based on observations of child behavior and child interests.
That's amazing. I wish we had more of that model now, that real coaching and embedded mentorship for teachers.
It was very rich. And again, I learned so much just from rubbing elbows with other teachers as well as team members there. And at that point in time, I had training as a teacher, but not in teaching reading directly. So again, it was the mid-1980s. So inclusion was just coming about as a philosophy. So I co-taught because it was an inclusive classroom. We had children with disabilities of all ranges. And I think a third of my classroom had children with a disability, T, speech, PT that we co-taught with.
A lot of stuff.
Yeah, learned a lot about collaborating with other professionals and really nice high quality professionals. And at the same point in time, whole language was how you taught children to read. And I'm a 60s baby, so I learned to read through actually phonics based approach. I had C, Dick and Jane and all of those basic readers. And I actually consulted to school districts around whole language. And yeah. So we had big books. We read about Monsters Party and Mrs. Wishy-Washy. And there was also, throughout the classroom, we had clipboards in each part of the classroom so that we would document children's do record keeping and document children's development, their fine motor, gross motor, social interactions. And in the child study department, we had David Elkind, who he actually wrote at that point in time, The Hurried Child. So it was a book about not rushing up children and development. Marianne Wolf was in the child study department at that point
Ah,
in time.
wow.
Sylvia Feinberg, who taught about child and the arts. We also had Project Zero, and it's still in today. It's a Harvard-based program where, again, it looked at child development and brought educators together, almost like a think tank to think about what's rich instruction. So it was a very just rich learning experience for me. My husband and I lived in the seacoast of New Hampshire, which was not unusual. So I would commute down to Boston. Our second child was born. It was starting to feel kind of strange, a little challenging, both of us commuting to Boston because my husband was. So at that point in time, I actually took a job up in the Portsmouth, New Hampshire area as an early intervention specialist. So worked with children and family who are at risk. But those years at Elliott Pierce were incredibly rich and formative, as I mentioned. And then we had 3 children. Our youngest was 2 girls and a boy. And my husband took a job in Columbus, Ohio. And at just about that time, we had a daughter who was actually evaluated at Mass General Hospital. And she has very complex needs, but one of the needs they identified was dyslexia. So it started me on that journey of figuring out how to help her. And so again, we were moving school districts, we were getting our family established, and I really didn't know much about supporting students with dyslexia. So I started just training in everything because I felt like unless I trained in it, would I truly understand what was most effective? So my daughter was on a medically shortened school day because of other needs that she had. And I negotiated with the school district because they really didn't have structured literacy in the school district and advocated as hard as I could to put out and take her to Ohio Speech and Language. And there she received LIPS, Linda Mood Bell's phonics speech program. Then phonographics was the reading program that they used, so I just observed. And then she had a speech and language pathologist who provided Orton-Gillingham. So I observed through a one-way mirror.
So now the Orton-Gillingham is coming into the story.
Exactly. This SLP said, if you're interested in getting training, I know of a fellow who is going to be providing a training at a charter school. So this was 2004, and it was Cindy Schultz. So I trained under Cindy in 2004, and the training was at a charter school, and the director of the charter school asked if I would work for her. So that's when I kind of registered, course part-time, and also started what I call my ice cream truck business, where I'd fill my minivan and I had folks who would refer to me, and I would travel to people's homes and start to provide Orton-Gillingham instruction. Now, when I was trained, yeah,
It's a lot.
and I was trained in OG, the associate coursework was 40 hours, and that year it changed to 60. Actually, after I finished with Cindy, went to Marburn Academy, which is a private school here in Columbus, to train in the remaining hours. Now, at that point in time, Marburn didn't have a fellow leading their program, so they brought in the Cole Institute, that Angie Wilkins, and 2 other fellows who provided. So I trained under Angie, and I can't remember the name of the 2 other fellows. Finished up my 60 hours, had my weekend private practice I was establishing. And then Cindy reached back out and she said, "You're an intervention specialist, right?" I said, "Yes." So she's a speech and language pathologist, and she asked if I would work for Olentangy Schools. And she was just working part-time for Olentangy as an SLP and a little bit of reading support. They had a particular case. They wanted me to be a private tutor. So it was actually the first private tutor that Olentangy Schools hired. This was in 2008. And again, I was associate certified at that point in time. There wasn't certified training available at that point in time. Cindy, so Olentangy Schools is a large public school district. It covers 95 square miles. It currently has 24. We're about to build number 25 and 26 school buildings. We have 4,000 students. And Cindy asked the special ed director if she could start to provide, at that point in time, they provided like a 3-day Wilson overview. And she asked if she could provide, because she's like, I'm a fellow. Can I provide Orton-Gillingham training? So in 2012, she started the first OG training at Olentangy Schools. The school district, I mean, we've been really fortunate because the leadership has been very supportive of this initiative. We also had a group of parents called the Olentangy Dyslexia Network who were strongly advocating for their children. So I think because of the parents' difference advocating, the leadership heard their advocacy. And again, Cindy started training, but there wasn't CERT training available. So the district paid for me to travel to Armenia, New York, 2012 and 2013 to train under Diana Hamburg King and Leopold. And it was such a rich experience. I mean, it's a beautiful setting in Armenia, New York. It was the summer. It was like going to camp. Beautiful kitchen, you ate amazing food, and you were totally immersed and didn't have any distractions of family and home. So did that training and then actually started a second master's degree at the College of Mount St. Joseph after wrapping up my CERT training, and then started work, completed my CERT training, became certified level, and then became Cindy's fellow in training. And Cindy starting to see that that retirement was in her future. So I became Cindy's retirement plan. So I became a fellow in 2017. Cindy retired in 2018, although she's actively working as a consultant.
Conferences all the time. I've seen her.
She's trained. She has 2 fits under her now. I think actually more, maybe 4. She really hasn't retired. She trained actually Mike Myers, who's in our neighboring school district in Dublin. And before Cindy retired, she and I worked on having Olentangy become an accredited training program through Orton-Gillingham Academy. And that also happened in 2018. We're the first public school district in the United States to become accredited through Orton-Gillingham Academy. And then we've been doing the work ever since. Fortunately, my team has grown. I have a team I just think the world of, a very bright, thoughtful, caring human beings. So we now have, including myself, 1 fellow and 5 fellows in training.
I think I've met quite a few of them, and I can agree. They're all great.
I think you have. And again, just because of all of our school district being so large, being able to meet the needs, like right now we have 50 teachers in a practicum. Yeah. And I think that's kind of the big picture of my story.
Well, thanks for that. There's so many follow-up questions I could ask, but I think maybe we'll just stick with the work in public school. Like, what do you notice, let's say, in surrounding districts or areas where they don't have that Orton-Gillingham program in terms of successes you're seeing through that in your district?
One thing that did happen, again, we feel very fortunate to have an in-house Orton-Gillingham training program, because what happens is the teachers can train and get their to come during the school day. It's all job embedded.
And that support is so vital as opposed to like drops of training here and there.
And the ongoing nature of it, because we have continued relationship. Yes, community. We're always making updates. And so they're getting updated as we're updating ourselves. Our understanding of the English language, like school psychologists in the district, we've written like Orton-Gillingham structured literacy IEP goal documents that are used throughout the district.
Right.
So there's a lot of weaving. There's a lot that we do that is an extension of our roles throughout the district. I believe this 2023 House Bill 436 legislation. It's called Connor's Odyssey, and it was named after Mike McGovern's son. And Mike McGovern is the president of our local International Dyslexia Association. He did a tremendous amount of work to help this legislation come to be. So all school districts have dyslexia screening. They have to train all of their teachers or provide a certain amount of professional development for teachers K through 12. And then we have to have a pathway to certification. So to answer your question, we are very fortunate to have this program, but other school districts have had to try and figure it out too. And they're all in various stages of this work. I think what we feel so strongly about is the importance of literacy education for all children. And as you heard Hanford talk about in her podcast, that can be a rich man's game if you have the option to provide private tutor student, you have that advantage, but all children have the right to learn to read. The other thing I didn't share is in the early 2000s, I also traveled back to Tufts and trained in Rabo under Mary Ann Wolf, and then went back and trained a bunch of teachers. So in addition to Orton-Gillingham, I still use Rabo today. I have, I work full time for Olentangy during the week, and then I have 6 students that I see privately on and because I love direct service. It's my first love. For me, I feel very strange to be a fellow and not practicing the things that we're talking about and learning, growing.
Yeah, I agree.
So all of us, it's actually one of our values. All of the fits on my team are still teaching.
Good. Yeah, I know. Because I think sometimes the trajectory is like I become a fit, I do training, and then I kind of park there and not
And really,
go back to students or have them. But I think it keeps us, I don't know what's the right word, but like up with our own game. You know what I mean? We can't give if we don't have that continued work with students. So it's important. But
yeah, I've done so much training since 2017 when I became a fellow. I'm a very different practitioner
yeah,
even now than I was then.
there's always new learning and things coming out that we have to figure out how to implement. But does your board like use any type of testing or assessment to like measure the impact of programming and progress monitoring? Like all that stuff is kind of built in there, I'm guessing.
It is. We have what's called MTSS, multi-tiered
Mm-hmm.
system of looking at children's needs. And then we have universal benchmark screening. We
Right.
use Ames Web Plus. We also do have a tier 2 screener should a child flag on our tier 1 screener, a
Good.
tier 2 screener. So we provide intervention at tier 2 level. And most of our children, if not all of them, who receive Orton-Gillingham are identified with a specific learning disability in basic reading and or fluency,
Right.
aka dyslexia.
Well, that's amazing that you have the availability to do that because I know not all places do, and it's kind of like we all know who the tier 3 kids are. It's not hard to spot them, but the
Yes.
follow through for support and service that they get the consistent need for remediation and then ongoing support. Because it's not just, okay, remediate and here you go, but they need that ongoing support.
They really do it. And one of the things that came from House Bill 436 was a statement that said that school psychologists are able to, through Child Find, identify a child with dyslexia. Because there used to be confusion that you'd have to go to a neuropsychologist and get a medical diagnosis. So we don't diagnose, we identify, but it's pretty
Yeah.
measurable.
We can do that. All right. Well, to kind of circle back to some of your training, like you are so fortunate because you've trained with some very important fellows like Angie Wilkins, Diana Hanbury King are founding fellows and very important in the history of the Academy. What do you remember about them as their positive influence on you?
I like to say I come from a blended family.
Mm-hmm.
Of fellows for sure. And Cindy has very strong Orton-Gillingham teacher practices. I think her background as an SLP was a real asset.
Exactly. Yeah.
She and I used to call ourselves the odd couple because we're very compatible but have very different orientations, and we're very honest about it with one another. Love her pieces.
Yeah.
And then Karen Leopold and Diana, it was just cool to get a different perspective. And it did impact some of our teaching practices. And then we brought those teaching practices back to Olentangy and established certified training so that it's now available. Diana, when I trained, I think she was in her late She was amazing. She had just come back from China, where she had done a teacher training over in China. I think gave herself 1 day to recover and then taught all day to us and did CERT training. She did amazing presentation on the history of the English language in her British accent. I always said I wish that they had recorded it. It was you could tell she understood the history in a way that was very natural, authentic. Um, and and Diana, as everyone knows, was quite a character. So she would pause, and at one point, I think someone asked a question about the etymology of a word, and she goes, "Oh, wait 1 minute. My ex-husband is a linguist at Georgetown. Let me call him." So she, ring, ring, ring. "Hello, darling. Can you answer this question about blah blah blah?" So we were. She's talking to him, and then she got off the phone. She goes, "Divorcing him was the worst decision I ever made." But Diana was just Diana. Again, brilliant. She had this beautiful home in English Gardens that we were able to visit while we were there. And then Karen was devoted to Diana. Took amazing care of Diana. And then Karen moved out to Colorado. She was from Long Island, started cohorts out there. And I have friends that traveled to train under Karen in Boulder, Colorado. And then she created a Jolly Fit Fellow group. And we would meet once a month. I think you were part of that, weren't you?
Yeah, and that's how I met Nancy Redding, and I don't know who connected me to everybody, but then I joined that group, but it was after Nancy had taken it over.
Okay. Yeah. She took it over for about a year and then it kind of quieted down.
Yeah,
But it was a great way to stay in touch with people I had trained with.
really, definitely.
And
Yeah,
Karen's fits.
yeah, the community was so important to me and my fellow journey and helping me meet people and learn and all that kind of thing. So keeping that OG community is really great, and it's so neat you have such a large number of people in your school district, because I'm kind of a fellow by myself and other people we're kind of on our own, and it's just a different way of doing things. But I met Diana Hanbury King once at an IDA conference, and I had bought her book, English Isn't Crazy, and she signed it for me.
Well,
Oh, I'm so important.
and as you know, she was presenting up till the time she was 90. So
Uh-huh.
we have a picture of our teachers, I think at an OGA conference where we happy birthday to her.
Cool.
And she
Yeah.
was still presenting on written expression at that
Mhm.
conference.
Yeah, that's neat. So what do you see as like big challenges for OG in your district, or what you see in the Ohio landscape? Every place is different in terms of, I don't want to say road bumps, maybe opportunities instead of challenges, but there's still, I think people are learning more, but there's still a lot more people need to learn in terms of awareness and understanding and all that kind of stuff.
Well, one of the things I neglected to say is that during the pandemic, I trained under Michelle Mira and Pete Bowers, and that also was very impactful on our
That's
team and
where we connected first.
I think it was, and their understanding of morphology. And then, as you know, we went to Island one summer. Training has also had a deep impact on our perspective on morphology. We've connected with Sue Hegland, understanding of the English spelling system. I think for us, we are a large public school district and we service all children with disabilities. And so oftentimes our children who are getting Orton-Gillingham, I would say the majority have comorbidities. And so making sure that we are training our teachers so that they can meet the needs of complex students. And our intervention specialists, in addition to OG, sometimes they're serving math minutes or sometimes they're handling challenging behaviors. And we have pretty high expectations about their understanding of the English language and their service delivery to children with dyslexia. So our practicum has really evolved to a 3-year practicum. And we've added in addition to all of the formal observations, we've added what we consider to be very important coaching sessions and kind of building checks. At the end of the day, the thing we care about the most is that they these practitioners are able to demonstrate a level of proficiency so that they can best maximize the skills of our students. But we also want it to be emotionally sound for our teachers. In addition, of course, we want it to be for our students. And that's some of the reason why we're making it longer so that, because usually we require all of our intervention specialists to take the first 30 hours of associate coursework. And if they're providing structured literacy, then of course they have to take all the associate coursework and be in a practicum. These are some of those first year teachers.
And they're learning a lot just on how to teach, let alone
Yes.
other stuff. Yeah.
So it's important for our team, and we really try to be very caring and supportive so that our teachers have what they need to be successful. But they don't have a choice. Like, they are required. And so that works for some. Sometimes it can be a challenge for others.
I really appreciate what you said about the comorbidity aspect. And I think this is an important area where we could all learn more, because we know that we rarely get that classic dyslexic profile where there's just dyslexia. There's the comorbidities of, concerns of writing or attention or executive function or who knows what else. And I read something, and I can't remember the reference to it, but it was kind of talking about the idea that, like, a lot of the science of reading stuff is, when we look for evidence-based practices and things, it's all awesome, but that is usually done in just a pure reading setting only, without all of that other comorbidity stuff happening at the same time. And then it's like, well, we all know our students come with so many gifts, but many areas where we need to support them in the lesson beyond just the literacy.
And I think the exciting part for practitioners that I like is really being able to look at a child's profile and matching instruction with their profile. And I think that's intellectually interesting.
Very stimulating and challenging.
And I think the other thing, my mantra has always been, because, I kind of flip-flop from a child-centered approach to designing based on what I observe from children, knowing how they develop, to a teacher-directed approach. So often I'm asking our teachers, how do we make a teacher-directed approach feel child-centered? What are the things we can do to make it motivational and memorable? And it's one of the things I love about Marianne Wolf and even Rabo, because it's a multi-confidential approach. But if you go on her website, it's, the name of her website is Nido Learning, which is Nest. And it just even harkens back to, I don't know if you're familiar with Reggio Emilia. And again, really kind of looking at the whole child and being supportive in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the science of reading movement and all of that stuff is really awesome, but some of these things are getting lost in the shuffle of all the conversation of trying to work it out, I think. And sometimes we can become too dogmatic the other way. You know what I mean? And then that's not healthy either. So
and OG really is meant to be an approach. There's certain technical procedural things that are helpful to complex, all the things that are in the OG goals that are so important. Like trusting the fellow, having that flexibility to be able to make decisions on behalf of that student and sometimes the practitioner, so that it's a goodness of fit for all.
Yeah. No, exactly. I completely agree with that. So in terms of like a next growth area for your program and Ottolenghi schools, what would you see as a place you haven't conquered yet? Or maybe conquered's the wrong word, but maybe a goal for the next couple of years? Because I know some of the resources you've all made and what you're doing, and it's just amazing. But is there some place yet you haven't gone that you'd like to?
That's a great question. When I always say to our team, as a world, I think we feel like we're sophisticated. And yet when we think about the first special education laws being written in the 1970s, and even inclusion was part of its, evolution that's now fortunately really solidly happening in our school district. I feel like we're even in our infancy in terms of the implementation of structured literacy in our school district. In addition to requiring all of our ISs and having them provide OG, we provide OG K through 12. We also hire 20 additional private tutors to meet the needs of our students. We have 1,200 students who receive OG.
That's amazing. That's just unbelievably amazing. And I can't even begin to impact or like gather the impact on how important that is for those children to get it early and fast and not.
And you can tell with those students who move into our district that haven't, students that come in, they're identified, get some years of OG, and then they exit. We have other students who get OG for a number of years. So to answer your question, there are a number of things we're looking at. We would love to have a way to do some research and gather statistics on how this instruction is, some real numbers around how it's impacting our students. I think the other thing is, so I'm probably I'll retire in about 6 years, which people don't typically report on, but I've been very explicit about it because I want to make sure the district has what it needs and that there's succession planning in place. So we've been very deliberate.
Because you want something sustainable that is
Yeah.
not you, right? Yeah.
Yes.
That's
I think ideally we'd like the job as fits and fellows to be sustainable. We work pretty hard. And I don't know if that will ever change. There's a lot of administrative tasks we do and things that are outside of the realm of just teacher training. So one thing we did this year is we actually assigned our fits to certain buildings. So they are those buildings, fellows in training. It's made a huge difference because
it builds a knowledge base of the local site that they can really carry from year to year instead of, yeah,
yeah,
that's great.
because have to see everyone still because we don't have another fellow. Well, they can have the people in their building.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been wonderful because now they know who to reach out to for supports. So that kind of creative problem solving to best serve the just the kind of things that we're looking at.
That's so exciting. I should go on a field visit or something to your schools.
Would love it. You're always welcome.
Yeah,
Consider
maybe
you
bring something back to Ontario.
we consider you an extended family member of Olentangy Schools.
That's great. Thank you. I feel special. All right. Well, in order to wrap us up today, why don't you share, if you're willing, a piece of advice to people listening, or maybe an advice you had wished you had heard at the beginning of your OG journey, and that we have these gems to share with others? What would be something you would like to share?
I think one thing that our team deeply values is a growth mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Keeping perspective that we're all learning and growing. We all are very open about our shortcomings, which just feels very healthy. If anyone had ever told me that I was going to be, when I first worked for Olentangy Schools, I worked in a high school. And here I was an early childhood educator providing, and I'm from New England and I'm in Columbus, Ohio. If anyone had ever told me I was going to be working with high school students, I had syndrome. Like, are you sure I'm the one you want? And I loved it. So I really think keeping an open mind. The other thing that we love is collaboration. It's very important to our team to reach out to other fellows, other professionals, because that has helped us to stretch and grow as well. Be good to yourself, take care of one another, I think is the most important thing. You to grow intellectually as well as in a social emotional way as much as possible.
Because we can't do it on our own, especially this all of us, literacy is such an important concept for us, and that sharing of literacy and wanting to not just have functional literacy, which is why I call it language for life, which is real engagement with literacy, is not a solo project. So,
and I think too, supporting it's not a field of all women, but there's primarily women, and supporting one another's strengths. We really have people on our team that can do things that I can't do or can't do as well. We have our Deborah Hegg, who we consider our Latin scholar.
yes.
We have our deep thinker, Sarah Latta. Just finished her master's degree and is bringing so much richness from her master's program and just beautiful thinking and authenticity. We have Becky Hall, who's a speedy processor, an amazing problem solver. We have Lauren Dariano, who is remarkably young for all the things that she's done, um, and offers so much kind of strength and solidity to our team. We have Living Lady who is super conscientious, and we can count on her for so much. I mean, there's just a deepening of professional relationships within our team where it's okay to have other people with strengths to support them. And what is it that they want to grow in and do?
And the job is big in a district too, right? So that teamwork, the support is really key.
It's essential.
Well, thank you, Holly. It was so nice talking with you today. Really appreciate your time. And thank you for sharing your OG journey and about what you do. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, Cheryl, you're so welcome, and I'm deeply grateful for this opportunity.
Thank you for tuning in to the Learn Literacy podcast, your trusted source for learning how to teach literacy through language and structure. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the podcast with fellow educators and literacy advocates. For more information, visit learnliteracy.com and follow us on social media at LearnLiteracy1 for the latest updates. Together, we can empower every learner. Until next time, remember our goal of language for life.